Masechet Nedarim Daf Chaf Aleph. We begin the third perek with vows that someone says but they don't mean, and therefore they are null and void from the beginning. Arba'a Nedarim itiru chachamim. There are four categories of vows that the rabbis permitted. Even if someone says it, it does not create any binding vow. Everything is permitted. Here are the categories. Nidre zeruzin, if someone makes a vow of encouragement. We're going to see examples of that today. V'nidre havai, a vow of exaggeration. It's obvious he doesn't mean it. V'nidre shigagot, a vow that's unintentional. V'nidre onasin, and a vow that the fulfillment is beyond one's control. Ones is it's a forced situation. So we'll see all these in turn, but today we're going to focus on the first one. Nidre zeruzin kesad. What does that mean? A vow of encouragement. Haya mocher chefetz ve'amar konam she'eni pochet lecha min hasela. Someone is in the shuk and they're selling gourds, and so the seller says, "I make a vow, I will not sell you this gourd for anything less than one sela." A sela is worth 4 dinarim. So he says, I am not going to sell this for a penny less than 4 dinarim. And if I do, then it will be prohibited to me. Either the item or the money will be kunam, will be like a korban, so I'll have to throw it out anyway. Vehala omer kunam sheni mosif lecha lashekel. But the buyer, right, they're negotiating, and the buyer says, I make a vow that I will not pay not a dollar more than a shekel. A shekel is worth 2 dinarim. So the seller says not less than 4. The buyer says not more than 2. And he says, and that will be a korban, right? This money will be a korban to me if I pay more than 2. Or the item, the gourd, will be prohibited to me. So there'll be no point in buying it. Okay, so now they're stuck. They're at a crossroads. Neither one will budge. But in the end, they do compromise and they settle on 3. Shenehem rosin b'shlosha dinarim. So it's evident that each one, the seller only said, I will not sell this for a penny less than 4. Okay, how about 3? Okay, fine. Right? So by saying that he means this, it's a negotiation tactic. He's just setting his boundary, but he means that he'll sell something close to that. When one says 4, when one says 2, everybody knows that they're going to compromise with 3. And even when they made the vow, I won't take a penny less than 4, it's when a person says that, they're hinting that, all right, I will take a little less than 4, but I'm not going to go down to 1. I'm not going to go down to 2. And so this is the normal way that people speak in negotiation, but they don't actually mean that they want to take a vow and prohibit the item itself. All right. Now, that's the Mishnah. The Gemara will analyze. Arba nedarim itiru chachamim. Amar leRabbi Abba bar Memal leRabbi Ameh. Amart lan mishemeh Rabbi Yehuda nesi'ah. So Rabbi Abba tells Rabbi Ameh, you once taught us in the name of Rabbi Yehuda nesi'ah. This is not Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who's a last generation Tana. This is his grandson, who was also the Nasi, but was an Amora. Man tena arba'a nedarim, Rabbi Yehuda who's the author of this Mishnah that says there's 4 types of nedarim that don't even need to be cancelled? They are null and void to begin with. It's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. This is Rabbi Yehuda, the 4th generation Tana, Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, who said, he said the name of Rabbi Tarfon, an earlier Tana. Leolam en ehad mehen nazir lefi shelo nitena nazirut ella lehafla'a. We already saw this statement in the previous stuff. It's going to come up also later on. We're talking about a case where you have a bunch of people sitting and they see someone coming in the distance and they're not sure who it is. And one of them says, oh, that looks like Mr. Cohen, right? And I'll be a Nazir if it's not Mr. Cohen. The other one says, no, I don't think it's Mr. Cohen. I'll be as a Nazir if it is Mr. Cohen. And the next one says, I'll be a Nazir if one of you are Nazir, and so on. So there's a machloket there, which one of them becomes a Nazir or not. And Rabbi Tarfon is of the opinion that none of them are a Nazir, even though the first 2 actually have made opposite vows, one a Nazir if he is, one a Nazir if he isn't. Nevertheless, Rabbi Tarfon says, there is no nazirut that's on a condition. Nazir has to be lehafla'ah, only if it's explicit for sure. A person does not take upon himself this vow of obligation on his own body and what he's going to have to do and not do for a month, unless he's saying it explicitly, absolutely. So if there's any condition, any doubt involved, then it's not nizirut. And so it must be, so here, Rabbi Yehuda is teaching that the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, who said it in the name of Rabbi Tarfon, that if there's any condition, it's not a Nazir. And he would say the same thing regarding any Neder. And here, this Neder, the seller is saying, this will be a Korban if I sell it for less than 4. Oh, there's an if statement in there. So you're not for sure, you're not saying for sure that you're going to make it a Korban? You're going to make it prohibited? Then it's not a Neder. Okay, so he must be the author. That's one opinion. Rava Amar, afilu tema Rabbanan, mi katan shenehem rasu, shenehem rosin katan. Rava says, no, I could even explain the Mishnah according to all the other sages who disagree with Rabbi Tarfon. The other sages say that a Nazir, a conditional Nazir, is binding, and a conditional vow is binding. If the condition comes true, then it will be prohibited, and then you will be a Nazir. But this case is different from a regular condition because it doesn't say that each of them decided that they agreed to 3. It's not like the seller said, I won't sell it for a penny less than 4. And then after the guy said 3, he changed his mind. He said, okay, fine, I'll take 3. He didn't change his mind and now decided. It says rotzin in the present tense, but in the present tense meaning that all along, right? It was the entire time he knew in the back of his mind he would take 3. And so therefore, even when he said, I won't take a penny less than 4, he didn't mean it. So at the very beginning of the vow, at the very moment that he said the vow, he did not mean for it to be binding. He just said it as part of the negotiation. But the whole time he was thinking, I know we're going to settle on 3, but I'm going to say I won't take less than 4 so that I get 3. And the buyer also said, I'm not going to take, I won't pay $1 more than 2. And by that, he knew also from the beginning that we're going to end up at 3. But that's just the art of negotiation. You can't just, agree on a price. You have to negotiate. You have to haggle. Okay. Amar le Ravina le Rav Asher. Amar lo tefe misela vehala amar basir mishekel nidra have o zeruzin have. Ravina asked Rav Asher, what about this case? If the seller says, I vow that I'm going to take more than a selah for this. Instead of saying, I'm not going to take $1 less than 4, he said, I will only sell it if it's more than 4. And the buyer says, I will only buy it if I pay less than 2. Instead of in the original formula where up here in the Mishnah where he says, I will not pay $1 more than 2. In that case, we just said it's evident when he says, I won't pay $1 more than 2, he means that he will pay a little bit more than 2, right? That's how people say it. It's kind of a hint. When the seller says, I won't take $1 less than 4, anything less than 4, he means, okay, fine, I'll take a little less than 4. But the question is, what if, and so therefore, that's why the Mishnah says it's null and void to begin with. But Ravina's question is, what if a person, they don't say that formula, they don't say, I'm going to take, I won't take less than 4, he only says, I will, he says instead, I will only take more than 4. Then, what do we consider that? Is that a valid vow? Because he said it that way, right? And no, he says, I'm going to sell, I will sell it only for more than 4. Then does that mean he really means it? Or is that also a language of encouragement? Is that also a way of negotiation that the person would say, all right, you kidding? You know how much I paid for this? I have to break even. I have to sell it for more than 4. And then the other one says 3. He says, okay, fine, 3. So which is it? Do we say this language is the same as the previous language or not? אמר לה תננה היה מסרב בחברו שיאכל אצלו ואמר לו קונם ביתך שאני נכנס טיפת צונן שאני תואם מותר להיכנס לביתו ולשתות ממנו צונן שלא נתכוון זה אלא לשום אכילה ושתייה. We're going to prove from this baraita that in fact people use exaggerated language all the time and they don't mean it. And so therefore even if he says I have to get more than 4, still he doesn't mean it, and it's not a valid vow. How do we know that? From this baraita, that a host is asking someone to come over, right? Come in and eat something, come and eat something. And the guest says, fine, says, Korban, right? I am prohibited. I will not enter your home. Or, I'll enter, but I'm not going to have even a sip of water, of cold water. And he says that. What's the consequence? This is not a valid vow. Mutad, he's permitted to go into the house and he can drink some cold water, because what he meant to say is that he's not going to eat and drink and have a whole meal, right? So the host comes and says, come in and have a whole meal. And the other one says, oh, I promise I'm not even going to have a sip of water. What he means by that is that he will have a sip of water. He's just not going to have a whole meal. And so you see, in this exaggerated language, even though we say he's not going to do precisely that, it's still permitted. So we asked about that baraita. Ve'amai hati patsonen kamad. Wait, he says he's not going to have even a sip of cold water. So how come it's allowed? We see that people speak this way in exaggerated terms, and therefore, since that's the normal way to speak, it's permitted. And so it's the normal way also in negotiation to say, I'm going to only pay less than 2, even though you really mean that you'll pay a little bit more than 2. And so all these vows are not valid. Amar le. Mi dame gabe sonen sadikim omrim me'at ve'osin harbe. So Ravina responded to that. Right, this question was asked by Ravina to Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi said it's not a valid neder. Ravina said, wait, your proof, I don't like your proof, because it's not the same. Regarding come in and have a sip of cold water, Sadikim say a little and do a lot. Well, we just learned that in last parasha from Avraham Avinu. Right, he says come in and have a little bit, and then he offers the angels a lot. And so, since the host, who's a Sadiq, the host comes in and says, come in and just have a little drink. Now, the host means that he's going to give him a whole meal. But if I say come and have a whole meal, then the person's going to refuse. So I'm just going to ask for a little, right? Just come in for 2 minutes and have a little drink with me. But the host actually is lying. Well, he's not lying, right? He means that he's going to offer much more. He says less than he means. So since the word come in for 2 minutes and have a drink actually means a whole meal in the host's mind, so too in the guest's mind, when he says, no, I vow I'm not going to come in and have even a drink, even a little drink. So what he means by that is the same thing. I'm not going to have a whole meal. They're speaking in code language, right? Like we see every day. But when he says that, he does in fact have in mind intention that he will come in and actually just have a drink. He just is not going to have a meal. So that is a different thing, because everybody's speaking basically the same code language, and that's why it's not a valid vow in that baraita. But here, regarding the buyer and seller in the shuk, hacha sefekahu dima pachot misela veyoter al shekel ka'amad vezeruzin haveh, or dima davka ka'amad v'nidra haveh tiba'eh. But Ravina says it's not the same as not here. We're really not sure what the person has in mind. Sometimes when the seller says, I have to get more than 4 even to break even, then he actually means it. And maybe when the buyer says, I can't pay more than 2, I can't afford more than, I can only afford less than 2, he says, right? I can only pay much less than 2, then maybe he means it. Or maybe in fact he's saying it for encouragement as part of negotiation. And so since we're not sure if he's saying it for zeruzin, or he means precisely his words and means it as a vow, therefore it's not the same as your case, where both the host and the guest surely the host surely wants him to come in and have a meal, and the host also knows that he means that he wants to offer him a meal, where would not be binding. So here we leave it tiba'eh, which is the equivalent in Nedarim of the word teko. We leave it standing, and so that's a standing question. Okay, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Aseh. Arba'a nedarim halalu srichim she'ela lechacham. So Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav Aseh that these 4 categories of vows, you actually do need to absolve them with a chacham. Now, this is a chat. We question this. We repeated this in front of Shemuel, and he said, Shemuel said, no, this doesn't sound right, because our Mishnah says these 4 categories the rabbis permitted, meaning you don't have to go to a Chacham and absolve it. It's not, the person didn't intend to make a vow, so it's not a vow to begin with. And you say that you have to go and ask for it to be canceled. This doesn't make sense. Okay, that's one version of Rav Yosef's statement. But Rav Yosef matni la lahashemata behad elishana. Rav Yosef remembered a different version. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef taught it this way. Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav Yosef, did not say just now what you said. Instead, he said, En chacham rashai latir ela ke'ayin arba'a nedarim halalu. What actually said is that a chacham is only permitted to undo a vow if it's similar to one of these 4 categories. In other words, if it's actually one of these 4 categories, right, of negotiation, like we said, then it does not need to be absolved at all. The person never meant it. What Rav Yosef is teaching is that, in general, if someone makes a different type of vow and he wants to undo it, then you come to the Chacham, and the Chacham can undo it if it has a similarity with one of these 4. In other words, if the Chacham can prove that the person never intended to make the vow to begin with. In that case, he can undo it. So what does that mean? Kasavad en potchin b'charata. What this means is that a Chacham should not use harata, regret, as a means of canceling the vow. We mentioned there's 2 ways of canceling a vow. One is by regret, and one is by finding a petach, an opening. Let's explain what they are. Regret means if I get angry at my friend and I say, I'm never coming over to your house anymore. I say it in anger, but then afterward, and when I said it, I meant it. But then afterwards, I calm down and I'd go to the Chacham and says, I regret saying it, right? I feel bad that I said it. Can you undo the vow? In that case, it actually was, I did say a vow, but now that I regret it, so we can go back and cancel that vow so it won't be binding anymore. That's charata. But in that case, I did mean the vow when I said it. The other way of absolving a vow is to show that I didn't mean it in the first place. For example, I tell my friend, I'm not going to come over to your house anymore. But I come to the Chacham and I say, listen, when I said that, I didn't realize that he lives in the same, in a 2-story house, and it's the same house as my brother. And so I didn't realize that when I said, I'm not going to come to your house anymore, that means I can't visit my brother anymore. I would never have made the vow if I knew that. And so in that case, the Chacham says, oh, when you said the vow, it was on false pretenses. You never actually meant the vow because you didn't take into account all of the consequences of that vow. Or, for example, if I say, I'm not going to eat sugar anymore, but I didn't realize that my favorite salad dressing has sugar in it, and I didn't mean that. I wanted to be healthier, and I would never have taken that vow if I knew that the consequences would be such. So that's a way not of doing it out of charata because of regret, but by finding a petach, by finding something, a realization that I did not take into account, and if had I been aware of it, I never would have made the vow in the first place. So the similarity of finding an opening and these four categories is that at the time that I made the vow, it's not that I meant the vow and now I'm going back and saying I regret that I made it. The similarity is that just like in these 4 categories, when I made the vow, if I'm the seller, I never meant it to begin with. As I was saying it, I knew I was going to take 3 coins, and so too. If I say I'm not going to eat any sugar, when I said it, I thought I meant it, but actually I didn't know the consequences. So now if you ask me, would you have taken that vow had you known what you were actually saying and what the consequences would be? If I say no, that means I took the vow under false pretenses, and therefore the vow was never valid to begin with. And so that's what we learn from this statement. That's what according to Rav Yosef, that's what Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav Yosef meant to say. Yes, in these 4 vows you You don't have to cancel them at all. His point was, a chacham should only undo vows that are like this category, in which you can find that the person did not mean it to begin with. All right. Now, even though we said this halacha in the name of Rav Yosef, that you should not use regret, we're going to now conclude the daf with a few stories of sages who do undo a vow based on regret. A person came to Rav Huna to ask him to absolve his vow, and Rav Huna says, is your heart upon you? In other words, do you have this desire that this vow should be with you? And he said, no, I do not want the vow, and he undid it. In other words, this is just, he regrets that he made the vow. He's not saying I didn't realize the consequences to begin with. When I took it, I meant it, but now I regret. And he said that's fine. So you see, he disagrees with this statement. And potrin b'chadata, he would say you can undo a vow just based on regret. Another story. Ha'udata lekamed Rabba bar Rav Huna. Amar le, ilu hayu 10 bnei adam sheyefayesucha be'ota sha'a mi nadart? Amar le la ve'tiro. A person came to Rabba bar Rav Huna, and he said, listen, I made this vow. I got into a fight with my friend. I was very angry at him, and I said, I'm never coming over again. And but now I regret it. So the rabbi asked him, listen, if there were 10 other people there who would appease you and would say, calm down, don't be angry, would you have made this vow? Right? This is one of the ways of resolving a situation, is by, if someone's angry at me, I could ask 10 people to go and intervene on my behalf, right? 10 people, he'll feel chashuv, he'll feel important, and will calm him down. So if there was that many people, I was in public, and they said, calm down, right, then don't be angry at him, would you have made a vow? So the person who came said, certainly not, I would not have made the vow. I regret that I made it. So based on that, he absolved it. Once again, this is an absolving the vow based on regret, hadata. And yet, Rabba bar Rav Huna used it. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Omrim lo leodam, lev ze alecha, im amar la matirin oto. What we just saw in 2 stories, we're going to see in a baraita. Rabbi Yehuda says, when a person comes to absolve a vow, we ask him, is your heart in it? And if he says, no, I don't desire it, then we let it go. Rabbi Ishmael Rabbi Yosef Omer Mishum Aviv Omrim lo ladam ilu hayu 10 bnei adam sheyefayesucha be'ota sha'ami nadarta amar im amar lav matirin oto. Or similarly, Rabbi Ishmael says, in the name the son of Rabbi Yehuda says the name of his father. In other words, Rabbi Yosef himself said that if a person comes and says, I made this vow in anger, we tell him, listen, if at the time there were 10 people there who would calm you down and appease you, would you have made the vow? Did you mean it? And he says, no, I would not have made it. Then we absolve it and we let it go. So we have a braita that backs up these 2 stories of Amoraim. Okay, we have a few more stories in the same vein. To remember the stories, we have a mnemonic, Siman Aseh Elazar Yochanan Ve'yanai. We'll just see some of these stories today. Hahu de'ata lekamed Rabbi Aseh. Amar le kedu tahet. Amar le la. Person came to Rabbi Aseh, says, can you absolve my vow? And he says, do you regret it? He said, do I not? Right? Do I not regret it? Of course I regret it. That's why I came to you in the first place. And Rabbi Aseh said, it's okay, the vow is cancelled. Someone came to absolve a vow in front of Rabbi Elazar. He said, did you want this vow? And the person who made the vow said, if not that they had angered me, I would not have wanted anything. I didn't want this vow. I didn't want to get into a fight in the first place. No, I don't want the vow. And let it be as your will. His wish was that there was never a fight and there was never a vow. And therefore, based on that, he regrets it, so they undid the vow. There was a woman who took a vow against her daughter. She got angry at her daughter and said, right, I'm not talking to you again. Atay lekameh de Rabbi Yochanan. The mother felt bad about it. She came to Rabbi Yochanan. Amar la ilu havayadat de amrin de amaran me gertaich Allah dibratach. And Rabbi Yochanan says, had you known that your neighbors would start talking about your daughter, they'd start spreading rumors about her. And here's what the neighbors are saying. The neighbors are saying, the ilu la chamat ba imah milin de aziba bichdi la darta. The neighbor started spreading rumors. Says, I wonder why this mother got so angry at her daughter that she made a vow against her. It must be that the daughter did something very bad, right? Had the mother not seen the daughter do something very inappropriate, she would not have making this vow for nothing. And so now they start rumors, the daughter, she must have done this, it's terrible. And now the mother realizes that people are spreading all these terrible rumors about her daughter. So Rabbi Yochanan said, when you made the vow, if you had realized that people would be spreading these rumors about your daughter, would you have made the vow? She says, no, I would never have made the vow. And based on that, he was able to absolve the vow. So we have all various stories of the ways that rabbis absolve the vows. You see, people would make these vows impetuously, in anger, part of negotiation, and because they did not mean the vow, would not have taken it, regret it. Therefore, in some of these cases, like the four in our Mishnah, the vow was never meant to begin with, and you don't even have to undo it. But in others of the cases, person did say it in anger, so then he did mean it when he said it. But if they come back later and they say, I regret it, or if I knew the consequences, I would not have taken it, those are the two ways to undo a vow. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.